Hey everybody, how are you doing today? This is Danielle. Welcome to the close. Can you hear me and see my screens? Thank you. Hey. Another day, another move higher. Can't complain about that, right? I sound like I'm in a plane. Well, I wouldn't know why. Thank you. Not until the day is over and the check is cashed. Well, there is a jet up above. No, but there are some fighter jets flying up above my house right now. All right, so let's just go ahead and start off with some requests. I have multiple tickers that I want to go over as well. It is a big earnings week too. Let's go ahead and make a list. And I'm also going to be, I'm going to start off by looking at the indexes while everybody gets their requests in. So starting off with the S&P, nice move here today. We've broken through 6,900, which is phenomenal. We opened up above 6,900, which was a really great sign because that was a major target and a key area of resistance. So the fact that we traded up through that level during the overnight session, and then even more importantly, when we pulled back to that level during the cash session, that was actually the perfect zone that bounced and traded higher from there. So that all looks really good. We broke through the opening swing high on the day, which again is bullish. You can see that the price action was hovering around that zone for quite some time until it ended up breaking through. So overall, everything is pretty bullish today. At some point, yes, we're going to run out of momentum here. But hasn't happened yet. NASDAQ just made another new high, so that's amazing. If you look at the overnight trade here in the NASDAQ, it was a little bit lackluster until right around this point. And at that point, we started trading higher on high volume and again held a perfect pullback into the support zone at 26,000, bounced and traded higher. So everything looks pretty good here. Cannot complain. Checking out the market internals just to see what kind of trade we can get at the end of the day here. It looks like the market internals have been a little bit lackluster, which is interesting because the price action has been strong. So what that says is that if we do start getting either strong buying or selling, we'll probably get a pretty good, decent sized move. But as of right now, we've had the tick stuck below negative 400 and above. Below, it's stuck in between negative 400 and positive 400. So what that means is there just hasn't really been anything in the way of major buying or selling. So like I said, if we do get major buying or selling, then at that point, that's where we would really expect the market to move even more. If you look at the vol spread has been slowly trending higher, which is great, but it hasn't had anything in the way of a major move. But overall, just bullish. If we look at the put call ratio is extremely low, which is typically what happens when the market continues to make new highs. I would say that it's not as low as it could be. It's at 0.57, and it was as low as 0.4 the last 2 days at least. But whenever the put call ratio is low, you just need to keep in mind that, you may end up getting a reversal and a pullback at those highs. So if you look at the VIX, you can see it's at 18.5. Nothing too serious here. It is above 17, but nothing too critical. Now, checking out the S&P futures on a daily chart, you can see that we've broken through the 127 tube. That's the first target. The next target is going to be 6980. So we are still shy of that target. And then after that, you're going to have 7,000. So still have some overhead targets. We still have a squeeze on the daily chart. If you look at the lower time frame charts here, what you will see is that we just have bullish price action. It's bullish because the candles are green. You can see the price is up above the moving averages. We have higher than average volume, which you can see by those blue dots on the candles. And then we also have this lower time frame squeeze that has fired to the upside. So nothing to complain about as far as the bulls are concerned. Maybe you have something to complain about if you're short. Looking at the NASDAQ looks great here. You know, we've broken through 26,000, which was the target. After we broke through 25,722, which was the first target. Then we broke through 26,000. Then we also made the next target, which is 26,147. So after that, you have a key psychological value target, which is going to be at 26,500. And, you know, we're up almost 1% today. So everything looks pretty good. I'm going to go over some of these charts that are going to be reporting earnings this week. So we have Amazon. This one is reporting on the 30th. So we still have another few days until that ticker reports. Overall, I think the chart pattern looks great. This one is primed to return back up into that previous high at 238, 240, and then onwards and upwards into new all-time highs, which would be up above 242. I've had a 264 price target on this one for a while, and this is a ticker where I've been buying long stock on it. I think that this one is primed for a pretty big breakout because it has a weekly squeeze. So I like to buy long-term stock when I have a weekly squeeze. You know, that weekly squeeze is consolidating because this ticker has been stuck in consolidation for weeks on end. I mean, really since the beginning of July. So I think on a long-term basis, this is going to go up into 265 and then up into 300. So I think there's still plenty of room. I think that there's still plenty of room for some upside with some long-term stock picks. Now, I will say that Amazon did not do very well with earnings last quarter. So, you know, it could be one of those situations where we don't get a bullish move in Amazon after that earnings report. But that's okay because with this one, I'm in it for the long-term game plan. Honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do with this one for the earnings report yet, just because it has kind of been all over the place. You can see that, you know, half the time it's up, half the time it's down. And specifically last quarter, it was down 7.2%. So while I love Amazon on the long-term basis, I don't know that I'm going to make a super bullish bet over the earnings report. I think with this one, it's probably just better to trade it on a short-term basis up into 240 and then buy the long-term shares. Microsoft, this is one that I've been talking about watching for a long time. When I was on Charles Payne like 2 weeks ago, I said this was my favorite pick along with Broadcom. And you can see that this daily squeeze is finally breaking out. So we have this daily squeeze here. It was consolidating for a long time, you know, all the way back here at the beginning of September when it started consolidating. And you can see that, you know, now it's breaking out. They did have some positive news today. I think it was a OpenAI collaboration that they have, which I was a little surprised about that because I thought they already had a collaboration, but I guess it's a new one. So never going to complain when there's positive news on a stock. This one is one of my top stock portfolio holdings on a long-term basis. So we'll never complain when it's up 12 bucks, 2.4%. But I will tell you that I don't love it when a ticker has a big move before earnings. So that does complicate my Microsoft earnings trade situation, which I'm not going to get into until tomorrow because tomorrow is when the actual earnings report is going to occur. But it does complicate it a little bit because I generally like to make a bullish bet on Microsoft. But when there's a big move like this right before the report, I would expect a little bit more of a muted move on the actual report. So I might end up just selling some neutral iron flies or something like that instead of making too bullish of a bet. But long term, I see Microsoft at 575 and then up at 600. The earnings move is going to be $24. So there's still, there's still plenty of room left to run in this one. I do own, like I said, Microsoft shares, and then I have been trading the Microsoft 2X ETF to MSFU. So that's one that I have bought in my daughter's account as well, especially because it was, just kind of cheap. So a lot of these 2X ETFs, I mean, they're a lot cheaper sometimes than the actual options on the stock. So I have been trading those a little bit more recently. If you look at MSFU, the price target on this one is going to be up at 65. So, you're trading at 57. There's still some pretty decent upside, but this is one that I was buying in my daughter's account when it was trading. Let's see, when was that? It was last October when she was born. So, yeah, I mean, around like $40 or so. Next one is going to be Broadcom. You're a long-term holder of Microsoft, but also worried about the double top. I mean, you will find that I'm a little biased about Microsoft because this has been one of my favorite stock picks for a very long time. And I remember all the way back when it was trading at like $120 a share. And I would pick this one when I was doing TV. And it was probably back in 2021. No, actually, because by then it was trading at 200 a share. So it would have had to have been in 2019 when it was trading around 120. So if we go back into this time frame, I'm sure I could find the segments for you. But around here, so this would have been like the spring of 2019. I remember like very clearly that I was picking this for a long-term buy, and it was most likely because of this weekly squeeze, because that's generally when I buy my long-term stocks. And I remember at that time when I was on YouTube and people were saying like, "Oh, you're so crazy. There's no way that this is going to go higher. I can't believe you're picking this stock after, how far it's come." And I mean, if you look at this, and if you scroll back into, 2019, and I mean, you can clearly see that it had been on a phenomenal run, right? Like just trading higher, trading higher, trading higher, trading higher. And here I am, I'd been doing TV for like 3 years at that point. And so I'm going on TV and I'm like, "Hey guys, I'm going to buy Microsoft at 120. And of course, YouTube people are like, "You're so dumb blonde. You sound like you're a dumb blonde sitting next to me in Starbucks." I remember the specific comments because I was like, wow, that's really rude. So anyways, that was back here when Microsoft was at $120 a share. And so obviously, I mean, you can see what has happened since that time frame. And that's just, it's my top stock holding, and it's traded from 120 until here. So, I can understand people saying, "Oh, it's come so far so fast," but it's like, this is also one of the top companies in the world, and they just continue to do bigger and better things. And if you look at earnings specifically, they continue to beat earnings quarter over quarter. They continue to trade higher going into earnings. They continue to trade higher after earnings. At that time when I was talking about it a lot was in the very beginning when they started the whole subscription as a service thing. So they started charging people yearly for Office 365. And I mean, now never would have imagined AI is a thing. But hey, the moral of the story is I'm not that worried about a double top. Yes, it's absolutely possible that it already traded too high and that it pulls back after this earnings report. But I'm looking at the long-term fundamentals for something like this. So I'm not too concerned about it on a short-term basis. Yeah, what's your next dumb blonde pick? How are my Galaxy calls? Galaxy calls are getting a little hit today. I'm happy to look at that one. Hey, appreciate your work. Thoughts on Open? So with Open, this one's a pretty volatile ticker. Um, the main reason to trade this one is because of the short float. So if you look at it on a weekly chart pattern, you have this weekly chart pattern right here where it has shifted gears, right? So that's great, especially for something with short float, because when something has short float and the situation changes, that's when the short sellers really start getting creamed because the short sellers are making money when this stock is getting destroyed, getting destroyed, getting destroyed, getting destroyed. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, there's some shift in pattern. In this case, it looks like they lost money over earnings, but they lost less than expected. Quarter before that, looks like they lost as much as was expected. Quarter before that, pretty much in line. But it does look like their earnings are improving slightly. They lost 11 cents, they lost 16 cents, then they lost 12 cents, then they lost 4 cents. So sometimes with a stock like this, what can happen is suddenly they're going to have a profitable quarter. And then that's when the thing just explodes. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. I can just tell you from the pattern overall, that's a possibility because their earnings have been improving. And you can see that there's buyers coming into the name. This is one of my favorite patterns. I'm not an expert in their actual business. I couldn't tell you from a fundamental standpoint what has changed. But I can tell you from a pattern standpoint that this is definitely one that I think is worth trading because it has 27% short float. It has a squeeze, and it has this major change. So for something like this, like I said, I don't know if it's going to be this quarter or if it's going to be next quarter or the quarter after that, but I think it's worth taking a shot at it. The issue is that if you're doing it in the options market, how far do you have to go out? Are you going to have enough time? This quarter, maybe people were getting excited that things have changed and maybe this quarter's earnings report is going to suck and then it trades lower. Um, but I think the pattern is worth a shot. I would probably just buy the shares of stock, honestly, just because, like I said, you don't really know about the timing. But if you wanted to trade it in the options market, I mean, the options are really cheap. So this is one of those that I may consider going out of the money and buying some cheap options because it could be one of those tickers that just completely takes off. So I like that one pretty decently. Galaxy had some bad news yesterday. I did buy long calls on Galaxy for the daily squeeze and for the 195-minute squeeze. So, you can see that today it's down like 7%. In this situation, I just bought the calls yesterday, and I'm not thrilled that it's down 7%. But at the same time, it's still up above the 34 EMA. And I think actually now it has a better entry than it had yesterday. So I'm not concerned about this position. Yeah, it's annoying when you have news on a stock and it trades lower right after you buy it. But I still think that it's holding really well. And if and when it starts to shift higher, then that would be a spot to add to it. I don't think I'm going to add to it right here. I don't think I'm going to add to it right here just because I already have enough of it, but I'm not too concerned about it. Broadcom, this is the other one that has been my favorite pick as of late. If you look at the way that it's breaking out today, I mean, it's just phenomenal. When you're just below a previous all-time high like this, that high is going to be your magnet. So 375 is going to be your magnet. The next target after that's going to be 387 and then 400. This ticker has a daily squeeze that has still not fired. Again, this is also one of my favorite stocks. And this was another stock that I got made fun of for picking on TV. And so it's really funny because I feel like the ones that people make fun of me for the most are generally the best ones. And I don't know why that is, but it was back. So it was like right around here. So it was 2024 that I was using this one as one of my favorite picks. And it's not like I just come up with it for no reason. I use it. I come up with it because it is one of my favorite picks. I apply the 5-star strategy and the 5-star setup, and I look at these 5 components, and all of these 5 components align. And so that's why I'm using it. And it's not like I just, pull some random name out of the air. So, anyways, this was another one that I was talking about going into the split right here, back in 2024. And I was saying, like, yeah, this is one of my favorite stocks. Every single quarter they beat earnings, and their earnings are continually going higher. And now the stock is going to split, and it's going to have even more volume in the options market. And people are just like, oh man, like I cannot believe you. CNBC people are so dumb, blah, blah, blah. And that was when it was right around here, like $139 a share. And so it's like, all right, whatever. I don't care. My stock portfolio is going up. But you can look at some of these tickers like this, and you can say, oh my gosh, it's already come so far. There's no reason why we should look at it. But then, since then, it's already tripled, quadrupled. And yeah, I still think it's going higher because you can clearly see that the trend is perfect. It's up 3%. It has relative strength. If you look at the last quarter's earnings report, they had a great beat. They were estimated to make $1.43, and they made $1.69. And then they had this huge move higher. And so now at this point, you have that price target at $400 a share. And, it might seem crazy to buy it here, but it was crazy to buy it at $125 a share. So I'm just going to keep writing these names until, something happens and something changes otherwise. But Broadcom looks great, continues higher. I bought the 2X ETF on this one because I just felt like the options were really expensive. I was traveling because I went to Orlando for the money show, and I don't like to have a lot of short-term options trades on when I'm traveling because I'm doing presentations and I'm flying on the airplane. And this time I was managing 3 children on the airplane. So for the last month, I've mainly been doing the 2X ETFs just because they're just a little bit more flexible. But for this one in particular, AVGX, you have a price target up at 70. So there's still room in this. You're trading right now at 59, I think 70, 72, maybe even 80 on it. So for all of those, I think it still looks good. I saw Henry doing the $400 butterfly. I think that one's perfect. That's the one that I was setting up before I went on my trip. I didn't put it on, like I said, because I was traveling. I think you could still put it on now. Obviously, getting in once something is already breaking out is not going to have as good of an entry as when it was down here in the squeeze, but it still looks really good. Tesla. Yeah, so Tesla, Microsoft, Nvidia, AVGO, and SMH are the top 5 long-term stock holdings that I have right now in my main portfolio. And then I have other portfolios for my kids too. So one of them has Meta as the top stock holding. The other one has AMD as the top holding, and then the other one has Microsoft with the 2X ETF. So I don't know. Maybe I should have done them all the same, but I didn't. So do I alert the long-term stock holdings? I always note when I get into them, and I have been posting alerts for the 2X ETFs. So it looks like John's getting into an NDX butterfly in the trading room. That's great. As far as Tesla is concerned, this one's heading to 500. So just like Microsoft at 600, Broadcom at 400, Tesla to 500, that is the target. These stocks, they just tend to trade to those key psychological values, to those targets. I don't love having a ton of short-term options risk on over the Fed and also over Magnificent 7 earnings. But, this chart pattern looks absolutely phenomenal. And, you have a price target up here at 500. So For this one, I do have the 2X ETF as well. The 2X ETF is really cheap. It's $22. I mean, can't really complain about that, and it's up 4%. So I think you could also just buy the 2X ETF, and then that way, if earnings end up being a little bit more volatile than we're hoping for, you don't have the time decay issue. So with the 2X ETF, you have a price target at 25. Um, so, there's still some pretty good upside, 25 and then 27 here. If we look at a potential butterfly on Tesla, again, today, not really great for entries with Mag 7 earnings this week, plus everything being up so much already. So I don't love the idea of getting into a bunch of trades right here. But for the sake of, demonstration, if we look at Tesla and say, okay, when do we think Tesla could be up at $500? You're trading at 462 right now. I mean, it could be there by the end of next week, November 7th. Historically, we see that November is like pretty bullish in the market. And what's interesting is that the S&P and NASDAQ are just continuing to make new highs right now, and the ticks are not even moving. We have the ticks at plus 98. That's like literally nothing. That's like no buying at all. So I'm sitting here and I'm looking for an end of day trade, and it's like I feel like I should just close my eyes and just buy it. But it's like I don't have a buy signal. The mega caps are moving the market. Holy moly, Nvidia. I mean, let's just buy it. Just buy it, guys. Just buy it. Just buy it. Close your eyes and buy it. Look at that. Crazy. This is kind of like a market melt up, a FOMO induced buying rally where people are sitting here like, oh my gosh, I missed the rally and I got to buy it now, because if I don't buy it now, I definitely missed out. So for um a day that ends in Y as a buy signal, yes. Danielle, I bought TSLL on 9/11 on your recommendation for $14.20, up 55%. Thanks. Awesome. Yeah, so I was just looking at my son's account yesterday, and I bought so I did alert out when I bought something in Leo's account. And yeah, I mean that position very quickly went up to like the top of his account. So I don't know. I've been talking to my dad a lot. My dad is a very active trader. He does have a day job, but he mainly trades and invests because he works from home. So anyways, he's been telling me, oh yeah, I'm just doing these 2X ETFs, and he trades options too. But he's like, these 2X ETFs are so much better because now like all of these stocks have 2X ETFs, and they're so much cheaper, and they move around, they're volatile, right? So they move like options do. But when you can kind of get more of them for a cheaper price, then I don't know. You know what I mean, right? So um anyways, he's been telling me all about these 2X ETFs he's trading. So that's why I started getting into those a lot more this year. And that's why I've been sharing those. FOMO, don't do it. Haters always lose. Keep up the great work. Yeah. Thanks. I always plan to hold, but good to hear your feedback. Yeah, I mean, something would have to change pretty substantially with Microsoft for me to change my opinion on it. I just saw a news article this morning that it's going to be one of the four. I guess there's going to be like 3 or 4 $4 trillion companies. And it's crazy because I remember doing segments back when I remember I had a lot of TV segments when there was the first $1 trillion company. And it's funny, I should probably remember what it was. I feel like it was Nvidia. I don't remember at the time. I honestly don't remember. But I remember at the time it was like, oh, $1 trillion company. This is huge news. And now it's $2 trillion, $3 trillion, $4 trillion. Yeah, was it Apple? Thank you. So anyways, with Tesla, I mean, I feel like a $500 butterfly makes sense. You know, you could do 470, 500, 530. You could also widen it out, make it $40 wide, really similar to what Henry did on Broadcom. You could do it 460, 500, 540. This one would hold its value a little bit better because it is slightly in the money. But, you know, overall, I think Tesla looks great. Again, I don't love the idea of having a bunch of short-term trades on over Magnificent Seven earnings because throughout the course of my trading career, the week of Magnificent Seven earnings has absolutely been the most volatile of any time ever. So I don't love having a bunch of short-term trades on. You know, sometimes you'll have, you know, one huge up day and then the next day you'll have a huge down day and then you'll have a huge up day. So I try to focus mainly on overnight earnings trades during this week and next week without having too many short-term swing trades on because of earnings. Henry's noting that there's a 15-minute squeeze in Tesla at the end of the day. Oh, man, those are the best setups. So these 15-minute squeeze setups at the end of the day are just like the best. And then look at that. You have a price target at 469. So if you wanted to do a butterfly for Tesla for just this week, let me see what it would look like. So I think next week to 500 would make sense. You used to work from home. You had 5 screens for trading and 1 for your work. That's funny. Yeah, I mean, how many of you guys are working from home and trading while you're working from home? So let's see. It looks like 470 has some decent open interest for this week. 480 also. It's interesting that we have a $22 expected move. I'd say maybe 475. I want to trim NVIDIA stock. Should I trim it at 200? Okay, I'll get to that one. So, you know, we could do 460, 475, 490 for $3.18 with a 15-minute squeeze overnight trade. You know, for the end of this week, or the $500 for next week or the week after. I think any of those options would be fine. Let me look at the 0 DTE SPX to see if there's anything to do there. As far as trimming NVIDIA stock, I think that you just have to have an overall, you know, you got to have like an overall game plan for what you're going to do with your stock. For me, what I do is I do sell some shares sometimes, and I use that to invest in my house. So right now we have 3 acres and we have a barn and a shop, and we're going to work on making like an external office out there. So I do have times where I will trim some shares and I'll use that to invest like in the property, right? Because you're basically like taking one investment and putting it in another. I will say that strategy hasn't worked great just because the stock market has gone up significantly more than the value of the house. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, if I just would have left the shares there, probably would have worked out financially better for me. But at the same time, you know, I need an office. So, So when you're talking about, should I trim my Nvidia shares? I can tell you that I have done that and I have regretted it every moment of my life after that. So I don't know that I want to advise you to do that. But $200 is a major and key psychological value target, and that's the target I've had on Nvidia for quite some time. So I guess I would just ask you, like, why are you trimming the shares? Are you trying to, do you just have too much Nvidia in your portfolio? Are you doing it on because you only want it for a short-term basis? Are what are the reasons for that? The only reasons I sell my stocks are because I want to, redo the roof on my office or something like that. Um, as far as like a short-term end of day trade, um, I just don't really see anything right here. I mean, we're right at 6,900. I feel like I could maybe just do a neutral iron fly at 6,900, but we're like $6 above that level, and I feel like it's not a great idea to bet on the market pulling back, but I mean, are starting to we are starting to see just a little bit as far as the negative ticks are concerned. It's not really anything major, negative 300. Me, 6 32-inch monitors. They don't get their money's worth out of me. Trading from home, working after the close, 57-incher. Why trim NVIDIA or AVGO? Yeah, exactly. Take profits, put it into QQQ, something else, not to keep all your eggs in one basket. I mean, that is absolutely something. And so I can tell you that that is one reason why I trimmed NVIDIA. It was 2 years ago when I first bought this house. And NVIDIA had just grown to such a huge portion of my portfolio where I was like, oh, this is just really, really heavily weighted as NVIDIA. And so that is why I trimmed some of it off. And I wish I never would have done that. So money is money, but having a place to work or rest is priceless. It's worth it to do it in the long run. And that's exactly what I'm thinking as I can hear my children running around and playing with cars directly above my office. So this is a problem that I have. Long Tesla, do you think 500 is possible by the end of the year? I think 500 is possible by the end of the next month. Definitely by the end of the year, I think is possible. I don't think I'm going to do an end of day trade here. It's just we're pulling back from the high. So I don't have a great buy signal, but I don't want to short this rally. So I just don't think that there's anything for me to do here as far as the SPX is concerned. Yeah, let's look at NVIDIA. I guess you could maybe do the neutral iron fly, but I'm thinking I'm just gonna pass on it today. Congrats on 3 acres, almost unheard of in Northern California. Yeah, it's really great, but the trade-off was that we got like a super old house. So it's like falling apart in many places. It's better now than it was. But that was kind of the trade-off, right? It's like, okay, let's get some more space, but the house was built in the 60s. So I'm in Washington State, actually, so I'm not in California. Man, NVIDIA just looks amazing. Okay, so now that I'm actually looking at the NVIDIA chart, $200 has been the price target for a long time. And the fact that we have broken through that key area of resistance and that price target on high volume, and It's up almost 6%. I mean, that's huge. So this isn't a case where, you hit that $200 price target and you just stop. It's a case where you hit the price target and you're just still going. It's funny, Brad. At least your neighbor will have to walk a lot farther to harass you compared to your old one. Yeah, it's funny. That was the reason. That house isn't super old, that's what I thought too, but I think more of the issue was that there was an elderly widow living here by herself for a long time, and so there were just a lot of things that were not, she just wasn't able to maintain it. So that's why there were, I think if it was built in the 60s and maintained, it wouldn't have been so much of a problem, but that was not the case. So I oftentimes feel very bad for her that she had obviously a lot of problems, but we're working through them. And this is just great. I don't know. I'm just going to hold on to my NVIDIA stock at this point. I'm just going to hold it. Going to hold it. My $200 price target was met. So after that, I mean, 250, 260. All right. Let me know what other requests you have. We're selling off here a bit, but we still don't have strong negative ticks. You're at negative 245 on the ticks, which is basically nothing. TER, this is a request that I got. We have a monthly squeeze right here that has not fired yet. Monthly squeezes are some of my absolute favorite entry points for long-term stock picks. Obviously entering up here isn't going to be as good as entering down here, but it's a great setup with a price target at 200. Let's see the weekly chart here. You have to worry about how well houses are insulated. Yeah, that was one thing that we had to do is we had to re-insulate everything because it was literally like we were living in a tent. It was so cold inside. Let's see. So yeah, I mean, $200 is the price target. Looks like earnings is after market today. Let's see here. And it's funny you bring up the oil because this house did actually have like an oil heater. And one of the problems we had to fix was their oil, whatever it was, like an oil tanker, it leaked like all in the yard into one of the rooms. So like one of the rooms was flooded and it had like literal oil from like a broken oil heater. It's like, what? What is happening here? Okay, so now that I'm looking at the earnings hot zone for TER, I love when a stock has a breakaway gap like this, the previous quarter. So you can see that it was up 16.8% and it never came back down. So this is typically something that I would make a bullish bet on. I don't love that the 4 quarters before that it was down. So I don't know that I know enough about this company. Let me see if I can just make a search really quickly. Last quarter, 16% after earnings, but before previous quarters, it was down. Can you explain why it had a huge earnings move last quarter? So whenever I see a stock that suddenly has a huge move, I definitely want to do more research on it. The market's going to close in 14 minutes, so I don't have a ton of time to do the amount of research that I would normally do. So let me just see if I can use AI to get me a very quick answer. But effectively, when you have something that changes with the company like that, it might be a situation where there's another big move. So let's see if there's high short float too. There's not high short float. But I don't know. I mean, I think that one looks pretty good. You have a $17 expected move. You could do a price target at like 160, 160, 165. Was that a real candle on NVIDIA? I mean, it looks real to me. All right, so I'm still waiting for a response on that one. Let's look at Hood and some of these others that you asked me about. What do I think about Hood? I think that it's too close to earnings to do anything with it because if you're already in this daily squeeze, great job. I would continue trading it, but since it's just so close to that previous high, I don't know that I'd want to get in right here. But with the daily squeeze and you have a price target at 162, then 175, I still think it looks pretty good. Look at the 2-3 minute on NVIDIA. Okay, let me get back to that. I want to see if I can get anything on for earnings. Okay, so we have Visa, Boeing, and Caterpillar. Okay, so for Visa, I pretty much always sell a neutral iron fly. It doesn't really move that much. It does have a squeeze, so it could have a bigger than expected move, but sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down. I mean, I would just sell a neutral iron fly on it. Let's see here. So we have a $10.24 expected move and $347 stock. So the thing is like this stock is always pricing in like a 3% move and it never moves that much. Could this be the one quarter where it moves 3%? Yeah, sure. But it does have a weekly squeeze that could fire. Weekly squeeze has been consolidating for what seems like forever. Let's just see what it would look like here. So the only issue is just that you're not right at one of these high open interest levels. So with a $10 expected move, you do 347.50, 347.50, 337.50. So the reason why I like to do this is just because the risk is really small. You have like a $2.40 risk. So you're risking $500 to make $1,400, but you're really not going to make $1,400. You're going to try to risk $500 to make $500 is basically the goal with these. And it looks like I should have worked my order a little bit better, but to open, this is a neutral trade for Visa earnings. I'm risking $500 with the goal of making $500 overnight. I am selling this iron fly for $7.41, and we'll try to buy it back tomorrow morning with beta decay and vol crush. If Visa moves more than expected, I will have to buy it back for a loss, but my max loss is $500. Meta looks good on the daily time frame. Okay, let me look at Boeing and Caterpillar because I might be able to do something with that. So I don't love the idea of selling a put credit spread on Boeing just because it's just been kind of a big fat loser. But at the same time, I mean, you can see that it's traded higher after every single earnings report. So, I couldn't really say, hey, let's short it when you can very clearly through the data see that it's traded higher every quarter. So I think with this one, let me see if the neutral iron fly would make sense. 561 with a $223 stock. So it's pricing in a 2.3% move. Seems really low. So I don't think I'd want to do the neutral fly. You could probably get away with selling a put credit spread at 225.50, but you're not right at a key psychological value to sell a good put credit spread. So I think I'm just going to have to avoid that one. You could also do a bullish butterfly at 230 because that would be within the expected move at a key psychological value. Caterpillar, I kind of have a hard time with just because I like the stock. I think that it's a good company. I think it's a good bullish stock, but I don't like that it trades lower on earnings a lot. I think that just makes it a little bit difficult because normally with a bullish stock, you want to be able to trade it to the upside, right? But you can see through the data here that you've had gap lower, gap lower, gap lower, gap lower, gap lower, gap lower. So it's kind of like, I mean, do you really want to make a bullish play when you can see that it gaps lower a lot? And then the expected move is about 4%. And you can see that there's been a 6% move, 6.3%, 9.1, 3.5, 5%. So if you sold the neutral iron fly, you would basically lose money half of the time because it has these big moves. So I don't think that's a really good idea either. I think I'm just going to have to avoid this one because I don't see anything that's standing out to me as a good trade. How do you choose the strikes and the iron fly? So you want to look at how much the stock is expected to move by the end of the week, and then you put your wings at that level. So with this one, the market maker expected move, I have it on my grid right here. It's $20.59. So if I was going to do a neutral fly on this one, I would sell the center strike at the current price. So since it's trading at 524, I would sell it at 525. And since the expected move is $20, you really need to go out at least that far because if you do it too tight, then you run the risk of it not working. So you would need to go out at least to 545, and then like 495 at the low end, probably. You can, you can try to do it a little bit tighter just so there's less risk, but it's not very likely to work when that happens. So if it's a ticker that moves like $75, like Netflix, for example, and you can't afford to do it $100 wide, then I would just skip it. Because in that kind of situation, you want to make sure that you're putting trades on that are going to fit your risk parameters. And So for example, Netflix, it had a, yeah, I don't know about that candle on NVIDIA. So for Netflix, it had an $83 expected move. And you can't really do it $83 wide for the Iron Fly, right? So I was looking at different options. Could I do it $80 wide? Could I do it $90 wide? Could I do it $100 wide just to make it even? Sometimes you have to do it a little bit wider because of where the volume and open interest is. And, you need to select strikes that actually have volume and open interest. So if you're looking at something that, you're trying to decide between 80 or 100, and you have to make it wider because you need to have volume and open interest in each strike you select, then that may be what you need to do. With Netflix, I was pricing out a neutral iron fly at $85 wide, but I elected not to do it because it would have had a $3,000 risk, and I prefer to have like $500 to $1,000 risk per trade in my trading room trades. And I'm glad that I didn't do it because, as you can see, like Netflix got totally hammered and it was down like twice the expected move. So you just want to make sure your risk is always being controlled, because this kind of move can happen when you do those iron flies over earnings. BE. Selling my November snow calls up 45%, posted last week. Nice. Really nice pattern overall. Daily squeeze. Nice 195-minute squeeze. I mean, I think it looks great. Let's see what the earnings data looks like. So I don't love that it had a 12% gap down last quarter, but I'll kind of forgive it because it had a massive move after that. And it has 17% short float. I mean, this is one that I would do a lotto trade on. 17% short float, massive move this quarter. It's possible that it gets hammered after earnings. Definitely possible because we just have no idea what's going to happen. And you can see that it got hammered on earnings last quarter. But this is one of those tickers where it's like, maybe it'll be up 20% tomorrow. So, you can do something like, let's see, it has a $15 expected move. Don't really have any time to get anything on, but it's going out on the highs on high volume. 232% implied volatility. So, I mean, if you wanted to trade it, you could do like just like sell up a credit spread. Market's going to close 113. So, you could do something like this, like 113, 110. Ding, ding, ding. So if you're going to make a directional bet on a stock, I mean, the easiest thing to do is just to sell, a spread in the opposite direction. What are my thoughts on MP? So this is a pretty typical pattern for something that's a short squeeze. We have something that there's a lot of news, there's a lot of excitement, there's high volume coming in, it just kind of explodes to the upside, everything looks great. But then it reverses And so whenever it reverses, it's not that big of a deal until it breaks the 50 simple. But when it breaks the 50 simple, that's a moment in time where, it's kind of dead to me until it can get back up above that level. So that level would be about $72. So if we could get up above $72, that's where I would look at it again. But this one's been pretty volatile, mostly because it's been in the news, and because it has short float. So it still has 17% short float. BA earnings. I did look at BA. I didn't end up doing anything with it because I just feel like the company's just kind of had a lot of issues, just nonstop issues. So I hate to go long, but you can see that Boeing has traded higher most of the time. So I feel like, put credit spread may work, but I wasn't super interested in doing that just because I feel like every earnings report, they just have bad news. But then what's interesting is that maybe the news isn't as bad as expected, so it ends up trading higher. Intel, I don't see anything that I can do with that. I mean, it has been recovering really well, but you try trading it up into here. It just doesn't look like a good trading pattern. You had a weekly squeeze down here that was a reversal. That would have been a good entry, but I don't really like buying reversals off the lows like that. So I can't say that I would have traded that. At this point, it's just already had such a big move. It's probably going to keep going if it can break through 45 and then definitely through 50, but it's just not my favorite kind of pattern. SoFi, that was one of the tickers that I did for a run into earnings, and I got out of it before the earnings report. At this point, now it's a daily squeeze that is continuing to break higher. And this one has short float too. So you have a positive earnings move. They beat EPS estimates, which is great. They made the first target at 31.79. Your next target is going to be 34. Sometimes you can get into these daily squeezes after the earnings report and they'll keep going, which is great. Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm going to go ahead and sign off in the trading room, and then I'm going to stay in the live stream in case anybody has any questions about the trading room. But I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. And for those of you who are in the trading room, I will be here tomorrow, the session, the hour before the close. So that's 11 o'clock Pacific time because, I'm in Pacific time. Thank you. All right. So I figured I would stay in the live stream in case anybody has any questions about the trading room. I'm doing these live streams like once a week. Usually I do it on Tuesday for the close. I have had to change my schedule a little bit more recently because, like I said, I was flying to Orlando and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes that will change. But I am in the trading room 3 times a week, generally, like I said. So Tuesday at the close, Friday at the close, and then Wednesday, the hour before the close. So that's going to be 11 o'clock my time. So if anybody's interested about the trading room, you can feel free to ask me in the chat. You can also email me. My email is Danielle@simplertrading.com. And then I also have this QR code too. If you are interested in learning more about this, you can go ahead and scan this link and learn more about the trading room. Yeah, are there any other questions? As you can see, I go through the positions that I have on. I put on trades if there are trades available. Sometimes like today, it was just a little bit lighter of a day just because I'm waiting on a lot of these earnings reports that are coming. So I'm probably going to be doing a lot more trades tomorrow and the next day because of all of the Mag 7 earnings reports. I definitely trade all of those tickers. And then once we get through this week, as we get into next week, that's when I'm going to start putting on a lot more swing trades because we've gotten through, most of the big tech earnings. So if anybody has any other questions, feel free to email me, Danielle at Simpler Trading. Other